We shall never surrender.
Unlike the patron saints, Andrew of Scotland, David of Wales and Patrick of Ireland, who are all historically recognizable figures, St. George of England is a patron saint with no immediately apparent historical provenance. Apart from what seems to begin with 5th century folklore, most reference books relate that there are no contemporary or other historical documents relating to St. George. Under such circumstances, it is rather odd that George became not only the patron saint of England, but also of numerous other countries, orders and occupations. The most perplexing anomaly is that, although George rose to prominence in the saintly ranks, he was originally deemed personally unsuitable by the Vatican, and the written accounts of his life were prescribed by Pope Gelasius in AD 496. But why would Gelasius have denounced George as a known individual if he were mythical as so often supposed? Clearly, there was an aspect of George's character of which the Church did not approve, an aspect that was subsequently veiled and conveniently forgotten as the centuries passed. In this regard, the literature concerning the saint identifies an evolutionary strategy of character manipulation through more than 1,000 years. This ongoing creation of an acceptable heritage for George actually led to the emergence of an entirely mythical figure, in the course of which the real history of the man was lost. This is his story. It was the dawn of the 3rd century AD, and now it was also the dawn of the doom-laden day that the king of Silene, in Libya, had long been awaiting with icy dread. For today, his beloved, only daughter would be sacrificed to the marsh-dwelling monster that had been terrorizing his land for what seemed like an eternity of hope-enveloping horror. He could still recall with painful clarity this baleful beast's first appearance, a huge winged dragon with long, spiraling tail and olive-green, crocodilian scales, venturing forth from Silene's vast, unpenetrated swamplands many months ago, and choking the countryside with stifling, stench-laden clouds of poisonous vapor that blighted everything it embraced. In an attempt to quell its venomous violation of Silene, the local farmers had fed the monster with 2 sheep each day, a strategy that succeeded until the day came when there were no more sheep, whereupon the reptilian tyrant recommenced its own strategy, of devastation by asphyxiation. That was when, with heavy heart and mortified soul, the king had finally agreed to the daily sacrifice of a child, in the hope of assuaging the dragon's wrath long enough for some miracle to deliver Silene from this animate abomination. The days, and the weeks, had fled by, and no miracle had appeared, until at last, the morning had come when it was now the turn of the king's own daughter, the fair Princess Alcyone, to be tied to a stark wooden stake at the swamp's perimeter and surrendered to the loathsome creature concealed within it. No one suspected that the miracle for which the king and everyone else in Silene had prayed so earnestly and for so long was about to occur. Bound upright to the stake, the princess had been standing there for only a few moments when her face grew ashen with fear, for she had heard the sounds of thunderous footsteps approaching ever nearer, assuredly the herald of her impending doom. Suddenly, however, she realized that the sounds were emanating not from the swamp ahead, but from the plains directly behind her. So she craned her neck back to discover what, or who, was responsible, and saw a tall knight, ensheathed in silver-grey armor with a breastplate of white, upon which was emblazoned a scarlet cross. He had just dismounted from a cream-coated charger, and was carrying a long lance and a white shield, adorned once again with a cross of scarlet, as he walked briskly towards the tethered maiden. It did not require much explanation from the princess to acquaint the knight fully with the situation, and he in turn wasted little time in lengthy accounts concerning himself. His name was George. He had grown up in Cappadocia, eastern Turkey, and had been a soldier in the Roman army before becoming converted to Christianity. Now he served under no one but God, spreading the Lord's word wherever he journeyed. A corporeal manifestation of evil, the dragon embodied everything that George had pledged to confront and conquer, and so, heedless of her pleas to save himself while there was still time, George untied the princess and stood in her stead, valiantly prepared for battle with her monstrous foe. He did not have to wait long. Without warning, the dense reed beds fronting a steaming quagmire close by were thrust apart, as a great reptilian head borne upon a powerful neck forced its way through them, followed by a massive body supported on 4 muscular limbs, and a lithe tail twisting furiously like a living corkscrew. During his travels through many strange lands, George had seen all manner of vile, misbegotten apparitions, but nothing prepared him for the wave of nauseous revulsion that swept over him as he beheld the dragon of Silene. Dripping with bilious, stinking slime that emphasized the livid hue of its scales, the hideous creature resembled a misshapen, obscene pile of rotting meat, green with putrefaction, oozing with decay, and reeking of death. Longing to avert his eyes and nose from such a sickening presence but intent upon vanquishing it from the face of the earth, George raised his right arm, and was just about to plunge his lance into the monster's head when 2 shapeless lumps flanking its neck's broad base suddenly burst into life, and to his bewilderment, George found himself surrounded by a flurry of blazing eyes. Everywhere he looked, they glowed and dazzled him, hypnotizing him with their terrible allure, until he raised his arm again, and hurled the lance with all his might into the very heart of this spellbinding vista of unblinking, dancing orbs. A terrible scream rent the air, and the eyes vanished. No longer mesmerized by their movement, the knight looked down, and there lay the dragon, still alive but mortally wounded, his great lance protruding through its upper jaw and into its throat. And over its body, like an ornate shroud, lay its immense wings, whose bright oscillated markings, resembling an array of brilliant A's, had so effectively bewitched George's vision. Running to him in delight came the Princess Alcyone, and once they had tied the girdle of her dress around the subdued dragon's neck they returned on horseback to her father's castle, leading the monster alongside George's mighty steed. There, in return for the knight's promise to slay the dragon, the overjoyed king and subjects of Silene willingly agreed to be baptized by him and thus be converted to the Christian faith. True to his word, George beheaded their one-time oppressor forthwith, and after bidding farewell to Alcyone her valorous deliverer rode away, into a future that would shortly transform him into a Christian martyr, and, many centuries later, into a certain race of medieval crusaders' patron saint, thereafter to be known forever as St. George of England. London is the seat of one faction of reptilian power on this planet. This has already been pointed out in the past by a number of astute observers. The City of London, which is sometimes referred to as the Corporation of London, is a 1 square mile region of business and commerce which is at the heart of financial operations on this planet. This article will discuss the emblem of the rebel reptilian faction. This emblem is of a winged reptilian holding a shield whose face is painted white, with a red cross spanning the length and width of the face of the shield. See photos below. This red cross with the white background is known as St. George's Cross. On the 23rd of April each year, the UK celebrates St. George's Day. Why is this particular reptilian faction referred to as the rebel reptilian faction, and who is this St. George? In order to obtain answers for these questions, one must look back in history to the time of a historical character called George of Lydia, who is well known in the story St. George and the Dragon. In this story St. George is meant to have killed the reptilian dragon. The significance of this story is that the slayed dragon represents the original reptilian royalty of Europe, supported by the Vatican. The Templar Knights who adopted the white shield with the red cross did so because after their order was destroyed by French monarch Philip the Fair they left France, their old base, and sought refuge on the British Isles. The French monarch rounded up and effectively destroyed the Templar Order on Friday the 13th of October, 1307. The last Grand Master of the Templar Order, Jacques de Molay, was burnt at the stake 7 years later, in 1314. The Templar Order escaped first to Scotland and then to York, and now they are firmly in charge of London. What the Templar shield, the shield of St. George behind which a winged reptilian stands, means is that the Templar Order have the support of the reptilian overlords on the British Isles. When you enter the City of London, that 1 square mile block of finance, from whichever direction, north, south, east, west, you find these statues of winged reptilians holding the shield of St. George. This is the emblem of the rebel reptilian group, those that rebelled against the main European, reptilian, royalty. Their rebellion had off-world implications as well. The rebels changed their allegiance from the main Aryan Queen, reptilian monarch, to the female reptilian power that has influence in this part of the galaxy. The Templar influence survives in London. Their Orion slave technology, the debt, monetary system, that the Templar Knights institutionalized on the European continent was brought to the British Isles. They have the backing and protection of the reptilian overlords on these isles. These reptilians have declared their stand for all to see. They are standing behind and holding the shield of St. George, the one who slew the dragon.